I wasn't supposed to be home. Not today. Not at that hour. Not with my suitcase still in my hand and the smell of airport coffee clinging to my coat. But life doesn't always warn you when it's about to split your world in half. My flight from Dallas got delayed. 4 hours. Mechanical issue. The pilot used that calm voice they practice in training, like he was announcing a slight drizzle instead of delaying the exact moment my life would collapse. So instead of landing in Connecticut at 9:40 p.m., like I told my husband, I stepped through my front door at 5:13 p.m. on a random Tuesday, while the sun was still shining in the front windows of our home, the one I believed I'd worked my entire adult life to build. Before we jump in, I have to ask, where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments because I love seeing how far Moments with Her reaches. And if you enjoy these shocking, suspenseful stories, hit subscribe and tap like right now, because I promise, this one gets darker every minute. Anyway, the house was quiet, too quiet. Not peaceful suburban quiet, not relaxing Tuesday evening quiet, more like the kind of quiet that happens right before a disaster. The air conditioning hummed, the grandfather clock ticked, the scent of lemon cleaner lingered in the foyer like it was trying to hide something. 2. I shut the door gently behind me, careful not to let it click. My suitcase rolled softly across the marble. And then I heard it. A laugh. Not mine. Not anyone I recognized. A woman's laugh, young, sharp, confident. The sound didn't belong in my house, and instantly my stomach dropped so hard it felt like gravity doubled. My first thought wasn't even cheating. It was something worse, like someone broke in. A babysitter, a neighbor, maybe my husband's sister came over. But no, that laugh didn't sound like family. It sounded like someone who belonged, like someone who had been here before. I froze at the bottom of the stairs. Above me on the second floor, I could hear my husband's voice drifting down from his office. His voice, deep, smooth, controlled, the voice that once made me feel safe. Now it sounded like a stranger was wearing it. I wasn't the kind of woman who eavesdropped. I never had to be. I built my marriage on trust like it was the foundation of a house, something you don't question once it's poured. And after 13 years married to Ethan Caldwell, I truly believed our house was unshakable. I was the one people called level-headed, rational, not dramatic. I was a senior financial controller for a biotech company. My job was literally to detect mistakes before they became disasters. And Ethan was a private equity consultant. The kind of man who always smelled like expensive cologne and polished confidence. We were the perfect couple, the ones friends secretly envied, the ones who made it. But standing there holding my suitcase handle, my hand tightening until my fingers hurt, I heard her voice again, soft, close, intimate. And then she said something that made my skin turn cold. "Ethan, I can't keep doing this forever," she whispered with a little laugh. "When are you finally going to tell her? I swear." My brain didn't even process it at first, not fully, like my mind was refusing to decode the words because if it did, my reality would shatter. But then Ethan chuckled, a slow, satisfied chuckle, and he answered her like he'd rehearsed it. "Soon, Claire," he murmured. "Everything's almost in place. Trust me, by Friday, she'll be out of options." I stopped breathing. My heart didn't just pound, it stuttered, like it forgot how to function. Did he just say, "by Friday"? The woman, Claire asked, almost teasing, "And she still doesn't suspect anything?" Ethan's voice dropped lower, more confident, more cruel. "Not a clue. She's too busy working. Too busy trying to build our future." He actually put air quotes around it. I could hear the smugness in his tone, even through the door. And then he said something that made my knees weak. Something so calculated, so cold, so vicious that it didn't even sound like my husband anymore. "She thinks I'm protecting her money. She doesn't realize I've been moving it." The floor felt like it tilted, like the entire house leaned sideways with the weight of that sentence. Claire giggled like she was impressed. "God, you're really doing it." Ethan sighed like he was enjoying the drama. Of course I am. She doesn't deserve half of what I built. She didn't build anything. She just benefited. That part was when something inside me snapped. Not my heart, not my pride, something deeper, like a safety lock inside my soul shattered open, because I had built plenty. I'd built stability, I'd built structure. I'd built financial safety for both of us. I'd carried his stress, his ambitions, his ego, like luggage that wasn't even mine. And now he was upstairs, casually telling another woman that I deserved nothing, that I didn't build anything. My vision blurred not from tears, from rage, from the way my blood surged like a storm. Claire's voice came again, low and greedy. What about the accounts, the ones in her name? Ethan laughed, actually laughed. Oh, those, already handled. I got her to sign power of attorney last year. Remember when she was swamped with that FDA audit and barely sleeping? My throat closed. I remembered that week perfectly. I was living on iced coffee and stress, barely eating, barely sleeping, and Ethan had been so sweet, so helpful, so gentle. He brought me dinner, rubbed my shoulders, kissed my forehead, and said, "You don't need to worry about money, babe. I've got it. Trust me." I trusted him, and I'd signed. Claire whispered, almost breathless. "So once she's served, she's basically broke?" Ethan answered like he was describing a grocery list. "She'll have enough to survive." "Barely. It'll force her to settle fast. I'll make her beg to keep the house." Claire made a little sound, like she was enjoying it. "And then, I move in." He didn't hesitate. 2 weeks. Maybe less. Maybe less. She'll be gone. This place is mine. My mind screamed, "No, no, no." This was my home too, my life too, my marriage too. And he was upstairs talking like I was a problem he'd finally found a solution for. Claire leaned in closer. Her voice dropped into a whisper that sounded like silk and poison. Poison. "And you're sure she won't fight back?" Ethan's answer was instant. "She won't. She's too loyal, too good, too trusting. That's what makes her easy." Easy. That word burned. Because I had been easy. Easy to love. Easy to rely on. Easy to rely on. Easy to manipulate. And he knew it. Worse, he counted on it. I should have stormed upstairs right then. I should have kicked the door open and screamed until my throat bled. I should have thrown something, broken something, but my body didn't move because another part of me, the part that survived corporate boardrooms and financial crises, took over. The part that knows emotion loses, strategy wins. So instead, I did something Ethan Caldwell never would have expected. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I didn't run. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and opened the voice recorder. And I stood perfectly still, listening, recording. Recording. Because if my marriage was going to die, then Ethan was going to die with it. Socially, legally, financially. I recorded the next 40 minutes. 40 minutes of my husband casually detailing how he had dismantled my life while I slept beside him every night. He talked about accounts, about restructuring assets, about stacking the paperwork, about making sure he looked like the reasonable spouse. He even joked about how calm I'd be when I received the divorce papers. He said, and I will never forget this, "She'll probably apologize to me for it." Claire laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. And that was the exact second I made a decision. Ethan Caldwell didn't just want a divorce, he wanted a clean extraction. He wanted to drain me quietly like a bank account. He wanted to take what I built and call it his. So I promised myself silently while my phone captured everything. I will let him think he's winning, right up until the moment he realizes the game was never his. When I finally heard movement, chairs scraping, someone standing, my instincts kicked into survival mode. They were coming out. I slipped backward down the hallway, stepping so lightly I barely made a sound. I moved through the kitchen, past the granite island where Ethan once toasted our anniversary with champagne, past the fridge covered in vacation magnets and smiling photos that now looked like staged crime scenes, and I reached the garage door. I slid inside and closed it behind me. My lungs finally released air in one shaky exhale. I climbed into my car and locked the doors immediately. Then I sat there in the dim garage, shaking so badly my legs trembled. Not because I was weak, because my whole world had just shown me its true face. I didn't cry. Not yet. I didn't even feel sad. I felt something that scared me more than sadness ever could. I felt clarity, a clean, icy clarity. Because now I knew something most people never learn until it's too late. The person sleeping next to you can be the same person sharpening the knife. A few minutes later, the driveway sensor light outside flickered on. Through the garage window, I saw a figure emerge. A woman. Mid-20s maybe. Long dark hair. Tight coat. Confident walk. And then I saw the car, a white BMW convertible. Of course. Claire drove the kind of car that says, "I don't worry about consequences." She backed out slowly like she owned the driveway, then disappeared down our street as if she'd simply visited a friend. Like she hadn't just helped plan my destruction. I waited another 10 minutes until I was sure Ethan wouldn't come down. Then I went back inside. Calm, controlled, silent. Ethan was in the kitchen, pouring himself a drink. Whiskey, neat. He looked so relaxed, like he'd just finished a good workout. When he saw me, surprise flashed across his face. Then his expression rearranged itself into warmth so fast it would have impressed an actor. "Maya," he said, "I thought you weren't getting in until late." His voice was soft and loving, the same voice that had whispered forever to me in front of our families. He walked over and kissed my cheek. His lips felt like a lie pressed against my skin. "I got in early," I said, forcing a smile so smooth it could have fooled a lie detector. I even tilted my head like I was tired. Like I didn't notice anything. "I tried calling, but you didn't answer." Ethan didn't flinch. "Oh, sorry," he said smoothly. I was deep in meetings. You know how Tuesdays are. Tuesdays. I almost laughed, because now I knew what his Tuesdays really were. Every Tuesday he had meetings. Every Tuesday he was busy. Every Tuesday he wasn't available. And every Tuesday, Claire was here. In my home. In my home, where my wedding ring sat beside the soap dish. I picked up my purse like nothing was wrong. "I'm exhausted," I said. "I think I'm just going to shower and lie down." "Of course," Ethan said instantly. "I'll bring you tea?" Tea. The man who had just explained how he'd bankrupt me by Friday offered me tea like he was a hero. I walked upstairs. Each step felt like walking through fire without letting anyone see the burns. I reached the bedroom, closed the door, and the second I was alone, I finally let my face drop. Not into tears, into something else, something darker, because now I had one mission: find out exactly what he stole, find out exactly where he hid it, and take it back before Friday. That night, Ethan slept like a man with no soul. He snored softly, one arm thrown over the pillow like he owned peace. Meanwhile, I sat in my office at 2:06 a.m., staring at my laptop screen. I didn't even change into pajamas. I didn't brush my hair. I didn't wash my makeup off. I looked like a woman who'd been hit by reality at full speed, and I was, but I wasn't panicking. I was building a case. Because here's what Ethan forgot: before I was his wife, I was the woman who handled audits, internal investigations, employee fraud, financial discrepancies that ruined careers, and I was very, very good at it. I logged into the main investment portal, the one Ethan insisted we consolidate everything into last year. He'd said it made things simple, clean, organized. Back then, I'd been grateful. Now I realized what it really was: a cage. The password screen stared back at me, and I whispered out loud, "Let's see how smart you really are." I tried his usual passwords, the ones I'd seen him type 100 times. Our anniversary, our dog's name, his college, and then the screen loaded. Access granted. I didn't feel relief, I felt disgust, because the man who believed he could destroy me used the laziest password imaginable. Like he truly believed I'd never look. The dashboard opened, and instantly my stomach sank, because I saw transactions, dozens, hundreds, transfers, liquidations, movements between accounts I didn't recognize. And one number stood out like blood on snow: $3,970,000. Almost $4 million gone, not spent, not invested, gone. I clicked into the activity log. My hands were steady, but my body felt like it was vibrating. There were wire transfers to shell accounts, transfers labeled as business allocations, account names that looked designed to be ignored, and then I saw one that made my skin go cold. A transfer made 3 weeks ago, $220,000, right arrow C. Hart Private Holdings C. Hart, Claire. Her last name was Hart. I didn't even know her full name, but there it was, in black and white. Proof. I sat back in my chair, staring. Ethan wasn't just preparing for a divorce, he was funding his mistress. With my money, with our money, with the future he told me we were building. Then I found something else. A PDF file attached to one of the transactions. I clicked it, and I swear my heart stopped for a second. It was a loan application against our home. Our house wasn't just his, he'd borrowed against it, Twice. And I had signed the authorization digitally. My signature, my name, my approval. The screen blurred again. This time tears did come, just one. Not from heartbreak, from the horror of realizing how completely he had played me. I wiped the tear away so aggressively it felt like scraping weakness off my face. No, I whispered. No, no, no. Then I heard something behind me. A small sound, a creak. My head snapped toward the office door. The hallway outside was dark, too dark, and suddenly my skin prickled because I wasn't alone. I stood slowly, quietly, every muscle tight, and then I saw him. Ethan, I saw him. Ethan, standing in the doorway, not speaking, not moving, just watching me. His face was blank, but his eyes were sharp, focused, dangerous, like a man who just walked in and realized the victim might have teeth. He looked at my laptop screen, then looked at me, and said in a voice so calm it terrified me, "What are you doing, Maya?" And right there, in that moment, I realized something that sent pure ice down my spine. He didn't just plan to divorce me, he planned to erase me, and now he was catching me in the act of fighting back. Ethan stood in the doorway like a shadow that had learned to speak. "What are you doing, Maya?" His voice was calm, too calm, and that's what made it terrifying, because I knew Ethan Caldwell. I'd watched him close deals with men twice his age, men who walked into rooms believing they were predators, only to leave realizing they'd been hunted. He wasn't a loud man. He wasn't emotional. Ethan was the kind of person who didn't show anger until it was already too late. So when he stood there, expressionless, staring at my laptop screen, I felt a primal warning in my body, the kind that existed long before language: danger. I forced my face into something neutral, something bored, like I'd been caught doing something harmless. "I couldn't sleep," I said softly, turning the laptop slightly so he couldn't see the exact details. "I was just checking our investment account. I wanted to make sure everything was still on track. You know, with the market being weird." Ethan's eyes didn't blink. He stepped into the room, slowly. A little too slow. Like every step was intentional. The air in the office thickened. He glanced at the screen again. And then he smiled. But it wasn't a real smile. It was the kind of smile you give when you're being polite to someone you plan to destroy later. "Maya," he said, voice almost affectionate, "you don't need to worry about that stuff." He meant you're not supposed to notice. He walked behind me, leaned down, and kissed the top of my head. His lips were warm, his skin smelled like whiskey, and I realized something that made my stomach twist. He was trying to intimidate me, without looking like he was intimidating me. It was manipulation in its most refined form. "You should go back to bed," he murmured. "You've had a long day." "Okay," I said, closing my laptop. "You're right." I stood up carefully, moving slowly so he didn't think I was panicked. He watched my hands like I was holding a weapon. Then I walked past him, out the door, down the hall, back to our bedroom. And I didn't look back even once. But I felt his eyes on me the entire time, like a knife pressed lightly against my spine. When I got into bed, I forced myself to breathe normally. Not too fast, not too shallow, not emotional, because Ethan wasn't the kind of man you fought with words. You fought him with evidence and timing, and I had very little time left. "By Friday, she'll be out of options." That sentence looped in my mind like a warning alarm. Today was Tuesday night. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 days. That's how long I had before he pulled the trigger on whatever plan he'd built. I stared into the dark, listening to Ethan's footsteps as he moved around the house. A drawer opening, the soft click of something closing, then his footsteps down the stairs, then the faint sound of the back door, and then silence. My body stayed frozen, but my mind started racing. Where was he going? To Claire? To hide documents? To meet a lawyer? To move more money? I reached for my phone, opened my recorder, and checked the file from earlier. 40 minutes of pure betrayal. But betrayal wasn't enough. Not for court, not for banks, not for what Ethan was doing. Not for what Ethan was doing. I needed more than proof of an affair. I needed proof of fraud, because Ethan wasn't just leaving, he was robbing me, and I wasn't going to let him. At 4:19 a.m., Ethan came back upstairs. He slid into bed like nothing happened. His breathing slowed. He fell asleep within minutes. Like his soul had no weight. And that's when I moved. I slipped out of bed silently. I went into the bathroom, locked the door, and sat on the cold tile floor. Then I did something I never thought I would do in my life. I called my older sister, Harper. Harper had been the one person on earth I never lied to. We didn't even live in the same state anymore. She was in Phoenix, married with 2 kids, living in a life that always looked warmer than mine. But Harper had something I didn't. She had instincts. She could smell danger before it arrived. She picked up on the third ring, voice groggy. "Maya," she whispered. "What's wrong?" The moment I heard her voice, my throat tightened, but I kept my voice steady. Harper," I said. "I need you to listen carefully, okay? And I need you not to panic." A pause. Then I heard her sit up. "I'm listening." I swallowed. "I think Ethan is trying to bankrupt me." Silence. Then Harper said something so calm it startled me. "I knew it." "What?" I whispered. "I knew something was off," she said. "You haven't been yourself for months. And every time I asked about him, you defended him too fast." I pressed my forehead against my knee. "I overheard him," I continued. "He was with a woman in our house. He said he's been moving my money. He said by Friday I'd be out of options." Harper's breathing changed. The warmth in her voice disappeared. "Okay," she said. "First thing, don't confront him again. Not without backup. Second, do you have proof?" "Yes," I whispered. "I recorded him. And I saw transfers. Millions missing, Harper." "Bruh. Then you need a lawyer," she said immediately. "Today, you need a financial forensic attorney. And Maya, yes, you need to assume he's watching you." My blood went colder. "Watching me how?" "Maya," Harper said, voice firm. "Ethan is a control freak. Men like that don't just steal. They monitor, they track, they install apps, they set alerts on accounts. If he's planning something for Friday, he's already 10 moves ahead." My throat felt dry. "So what do?" I whispered. Harper didn't hesitate. "You act normal," she said. "You smile. You play the wife. And you quietly protect yourself." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "I'm going to send you a number," she continued. "My friend Danny in law school, her husband works with a forensic attorney in Connecticut. She told me once it's the best one in the state. I'm texting you his contact right now." My eyes burned. "Harper," I whispered. "Don't cry," she snapped. "Not yet, cry later. Right now you need to be smarter than him." And I realized Harper wasn't comforting me. She was arming me. That's what love looks like when danger is real. I hung up, took a deep breath, and stared at myself in the mirror. My face looked the same, but my eyes didn't. They looked like someone who had finally seen the truth, someone who would never unsee it. By morning, I was in character. I made breakfast, eggs, toast, coffee. I even set Ethan's mug out. The black one he liked, the one that said execute. He came down at 7:30 a.m., perfectly composed, hair neat, shirt pressed. The image of a stable husband. He kissed my cheek again. "Morning, babe." "Morning," I replied sweetly, sliding his coffee over. "Sleep okay?" "Sleep okay?" "Like a rock," he said. "You?" "Not great," I admitted, carefully crafting my words. "Jet lag." I woke up at night and got anxious about our investments. Ethan's eyes flickered, just once. Then his face softened into fake concern. "Oh, Maya," he said, almost chuckling. "Don't stress. Everything is fine. You know I've got it." I nodded. Then I lowered my voice like I was confessing something. "I think I need to stop obsessing about money," I said. "Maybe I should just trust you completely." Ethan froze for half a second, and I saw it. The satisfaction, the relief, the arrogance, the arrogance. He smiled wider. "That's exactly what you should do," he said gently. And as he spoke, he squeezed my shoulder. Not hard, not aggressively, but possessively, like he was reminding me who owned the board. Then he stepped away and grabbed his keys. "I've got a lunch meeting," he said casually. "I'll be back later." I forced another smile. "Okay, drive safe." He left, and the second the door shut, my face dropped. I didn't waste a second. I ran upstairs to my office and opened my laptop again. But this time, I didn't log into the same portal. No. I logged into my personal employee portal at work, pulled up my insurance documents, and searched for something very specific: legal assistance benefits. I found it. And for the first time in 12 hours, I felt a spark of hope. Because my company offered free initial consultations for legal emergencies. And this was an emergency. I called the number. By 10:47 a.m., I had an appointment that afternoon with a forensic family attorney named Calvin Reese. And by noon, Harper texted me another name, a private investigator, Mason Ryland. Her message was only 6 words long. If Ethan is dirty, Mason finds it. I stared at my phone. My hands were shaking again. But this time it wasn't fear, it was something else because I realized I had options. Ethan didn't know it yet, but he had made one fatal mistake. He thought I was alone. At 2:30 p.m., I sat in a small office in Hartford that smelled like leather chairs and coffee. Calvin Reese was in his late 40s, with calm eyes and a voice that made you feel like you were finally standing on solid ground. He didn't waste time. He slid a notepad toward himself and said, "Tell me everything. Start from the moment you realized something was wrong." So I did. I told him about the flight delay, the laughter upstairs, the whisper. By Friday, she'll be out of options. I told him about the accounts, the transfers, the PDF, the home equity loans, and then I played him the recording. Calvin listened without interrupting. His face stayed neutral, but I saw his jaw tighten when Ethan said, "She didn't build anything. She just benefited." When the recording ended, Calvin exhaled slowly. "That," he said quietly, "is not just divorce planning. That's financial abuse." My stomach clenched. "Can he really do this?" I asked. Calvin leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. "He can try," he said. "But if we move fast, we can stop him. And more importantly, we can document everything before he wipes his tracks." I gripped my purse. "What do I do?" Calvin's tone became sharper. "First," he said, "you do not tell him you're here. You continue to act normal. Second, we file an emergency motion to freeze marital assets." My heart jumped. "Freeze them?" "Yes," Calvin said. "If we can show the court he's transferring funds to a third party, we can stop the bleeding." I swallowed. "And the money he already moved?" Calvin's eyes narrowed. "We trace it, we subpoena, we pull bank records, we go after the shell accounts. And if he committed fraud, especially forging documents or abusing power of attorney, we go nuclear." I stared at him. "Go nuclear," I repeated. Calvin nodded. "That includes criminal investigations." My stomach turned. This wasn't just heartbreak anymore. This was war. Calvin slid a paper across the table. "Do you have access to the original power of attorney document, the one you signed?" I thought for a moment. "Yes," I said slowly. "It's in our safe. Upstairs closet. Ethan thinks I don't know the code." Calvin's pen tapped the desk once. "Then you need to get it," he said. "Tonight if you can. Photograph it. Copy it." And Maya, his voice lowered. "You need to assume he will escalate if he realizes he's losing control." My throat tightened. "Escalate how?" Calvin didn't answer right away. He chose his words carefully. "People like Ethan don't like being exposed," he said. "And when control slips, they don't become calm, they become desperate." That night, Ethan came home with takeout. Thai food, my favorite. Like he was trying to remind me of our love, he smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Thought I'd surprise you." I smiled back. "Thank you," I said sweetly, and then I did something so painful it almost made me choke. I sat at the dinner table and asked him about his day. I laughed at his jokes. I nodded while he spoke about meetings and investment strategies. I played the role of wife so well. Even I almost believed it. But then Ethan did something that made my skin crawl. Halfway through dinner, he reached across the table and gently took my hand. His thumb rubbed my knuckles. And he looked into my eyes like a man in love. "Maya," he said softly, "I've been thinking." "Oh," I responded. "I think we should reorganize some accounts," he said smoothly, "just to simplify things. And I want you to sign something tomorrow morning." My heart slammed in my chest. A new document. A new signature. He was speeding up. Friday was getting closer. I forced a yawn, like I didn't care. "Sure," I said lightly. "Whatever you think is best." Ethan smiled, and in that smile I saw it again. Not love, victory. When he fell asleep later, I waited. 1 minute, 2, 10. 10. When I was sure his breathing was deep, I slid out of bed. I moved silently into the closet, crouched beside the safe. It was hidden behind a stack of shoe boxes and an old winter coat Ethan never wore. I entered the code I'd watched Ethan type once when he thought I wasn't looking. The safe clicked open, and what I saw inside made my breath catch. Not just documents, not just jewelry. There were envelopes, stacks of cash, passports, not mine, not his. A woman's passport, different name, different face, but the same eyes I'd seen leaving my driveway. Claire. And behind it, another passport. Another woman, another name. My hands trembled as I flipped through them. 3 passports, 2 women, multiple names. And then I found a sealed envelope labeled Divorce Strategy. Friday I stared at it like it was a bomb. My fingers hesitated, then I opened it. And then I opened it. Inside was a printed timeline, a literal schedule. Like my life was a business project. It read, White heavy checkmark Thursday. Final transfer to holding white heavy checkmark Friday 9:00 a.m. Serve papers white heavy checkmark Friday 11:30 a.m. Maya agrees to settlement white heavy checkmark Friday 10 p.m. Claire access granted white heavy checkmark Monday. House listing preparation I couldn't breathe. He had planned this down to the hour. Like I was a task on a to-do list. Then I saw the last line at the bottom. One sentence typed neatly, like it was nothing. If she resists, remind her who she is without me. I felt sick. Because Ethan wasn't just planning to take my money, he was planning to break my identity. To hollow me out emotionally so I wouldn't fight. And the fact that he wrote it like a normal contingency plan, that was evil. I took photos of everything, every page, every passport, every name, every detail. Then I pulled out the power of attorney document. My signature was on it. But when I looked closer, I noticed something I hadn't before. The document had been modified. A tiny section about authority to transfer assets looked slightly different. Different font weight, different spacing. It wasn't the same as the original template. My blood ran cold. He didn't just trick me into signing, he may have altered the document after. That meant fraud, real fraud, the kind that didn't end in divorce court, the kind that ended in handcuffs. I quietly shut the safe and returned everything exactly how I found it. Then I went back to bed and stared into the dark, because now I knew Friday wasn't just the day Ethan served me. It was the day he expected me to surrender, and I wasn't going to. The next morning, Ethan was in an unusually good mood. He whistled while he made coffee. He even complimented my hair. You look rested, he said. I smiled. I slept great, I lied. He sat beside me at the kitchen island and slid a folder toward me. There it is, he said casually. Just a few signatures. Basic stuff. I opened it slowly. My hands steady. Inside were 3 documents. One was a bank authorization. One was a new power of attorney revision. And one was a postnuptial agreement. My vision sharpened like a camera focusing, because I knew what a postnup meant. It meant he was trying to trap me into signing away rights, and Ethan had disguised it like simplifying. I looked up at him. I didn't know we needed a postnup, I said lightly. Ethan leaned closer, voice warm. We don't need it, he said. It's just smart. It protects us, protects us. I almost smiled at the irony, because it was designed to protect him, from me, from consequences. He slid a pen toward my hand. And in that moment, I realized Ethan thought the game was over. He thought I would sign, because that's what I always did. I stared down at the pen. Then I looked back up at him and smiled gently. Of course, I said. Ethan's eyes gleamed. Yes, I'll sign, I said sweetly. And then I added, but not today, his smile faltered. What? I leaned back, acting casual. I want to read everything thoroughly first, I said. You know me. I'm cautious. Ethan's jaw tightened, only slightly, but I caught it. He forced another smile. Babe, he said, almost laughing. It's standard, nothing crazy. Then it won't be a problem if I read it, I replied. The air between us changed. The temperature shifted. Ethan's gaze darkened. Are you suddenly not trusting me? He asked softly. The words were quiet, but the threat was loud. I tilted my head, smiling like I was confused. Of course I trust you, I said gently. That's why I want to do it right. Ethan held my gaze for a long, tense moment. Then he nodded slowly. Fine, he said. Take your time, but his tone said something else. I don't like this. He stood up, grabbed his mug, and walked away. And the second he turned his back, I exhaled. Because I'd done it. I'd pushed back, just a little, and I'd seen his mask slip. That afternoon, I met Mason Ryland, Harper's private investigator. He wasn't what I expected. Not some bulky guy in sunglasses. Boswell said. Mason looked like a regular man, early 30s, simple coat, calm eyes. But something about him felt sharp, like he noticed everything without reacting. We sat in a quiet cafe in West Hartford. I slid my phone across the table and played him the recording. Mason listened, expression unchanged. When it finished, he nodded slowly. "This guy's a professional liar," he said. My throat tightened. "You can help me?" Mason sipped his coffee once. "Yes," he said, "but you need to decide something right now." "What?" He leaned in slightly, eyes serious. "Are you trying to survive him or destroy him?" The question hit me like a slap because it forced me to admit the truth. Surviving wasn't enough anymore. Not after what I saw in the safe. Not after the passports. Not after the timeline. Not after the way he enjoyed the idea of breaking me. I stared at Mason and said, "I want the truth. I want proof. And I want him to never do this to another woman again." Mason nodded once. "Good," he said. "Then we start tonight." That evening, Ethan left the house at 8:00 p.m. He claimed it was for a client dinner. But I knew better. I watched from the upstairs window as he drove away. Then I grabbed my coat, my phone, and the small device Mason handed me earlier, a tiny tracker. "Put it somewhere hidden," Mason had said. "Me. And you'll know where he really goes." I walked into the garage and opened Ethan's car door. My heart pounded like I was committing a crime. But the truth was, I was, just not against him, against his illusion of control. I slid the tracker under the driver's seat, tucked deep where it couldn't be seen. Then I shut the door, and my phone buzzed. A message from Mason. "He's moving. Sending location now." I opened it, and what I saw made my stomach drop. Ethan wasn't going to a restaurant. He wasn't going to a hotel either. He was driving to a place I never expected, a bank, a private bank branch on the edge of town. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't done. He was making his final move before Friday. And if I wanted to stop him, I had to see what he was doing. So I got in my car and I followed. I stayed far enough back not to look suspicious. 2 cars between us, sometimes 3, topped. The sky was dark, the streets quiet, and every red light felt like a heartbeat ticking down. Ethan pulled into the bank's private parking lot, the kind reserved for high net worth clients. He walked inside, and I waited, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my fingers ached. Minutes passed, then 20, then 30. Finally, Ethan walked back out. But he wasn't alone. A man in a suit walked beside him, and in his hand was a folder, thick, official. And Ethan looked pleased, satisfied like he'd just won something. Then he got into his car and drove away. The suited man went back inside. I sat frozen, staring at the bank entrance. My mind raced. What was in that folder? What was he signing? What did he just secure? Then my phone buzzed again, a new message from Mason. "I'm pulling his background now. Stay close." I swallowed hard. Because I knew whatever Ethan just did was the final piece, and I had a sick feeling. That Friday wasn't going to be just divorce papers. It was going to be a full-scale ambush. When Ethan came home, it was late. Almost midnight, he walked in humming again, like he was celebrating. He kissed my forehead like a loving husband. And then he said the most chilling thing of all. "Tomorrow's going to be a big day, Maya." My blood ran cold. I smiled softly, pretending I didn't understand. "Oh," I asked. Ethan's eyes locked onto mine, and for the first time he didn't look away. "I think you're going to be really proud of me," he said. Then he walked upstairs, and I stood in the kitchen alone, heart hammering, because I knew. Tomorrow was Thursday, one day before Friday, and Ethan had just confirmed it. The trap was almost set. But what Ethan didn't know, I had set my own trap too, and his was built on my fear. Mine was built on his arrogance. If you're still here, comment right now, because next part is where Maya flips the entire game and Ethan realizes he didn't marry a victim, he married the wrong enemy. "All right, let's finish this," Ethan said. "Tomorrow's going to be a big day, Maya." Then he walked upstairs like he hadn't just dropped a threat disguised as a compliment. I stood in the kitchen, completely still, listening to his footsteps fade into the second floor. And for the first time since I walked through that front door early Tuesday evening, I didn't feel confused. I didn't feel hurt. I didn't feel like my heart was breaking anymore. I felt focused. Because now I knew something Ethan didn't. He wasn't the only one who could plan. He wasn't the only one who could manipulate. And he wasn't the only one who could destroy someone's life with paperwork. The difference was Ethan used strategy to harm. I was going to use strategy to survive. And then I was going to use it to end him. Thursday, 6 a.m. I didn't sleep. Not really. I laid in bed beside Ethan's warm body, staring into the dark while my mind ran numbers like a machine. Every transfer, every date, every account name, every lie. I couldn't stop hearing his voice in my head. She's too loyal, too good, too trusting. That's what makes her easy, easy, easy. That word had followed me all night like a shadow, and I promised myself no one would ever call me easy again. At 6:06, Ethan's alarm went off. He turned it off instantly and sat up, rolling his shoulders like the day belonged to him. He leaned over, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "Morning." I blinked slowly, pretending I'd just woken up. I murmured. Morning, he went to shower. And the moment the bathroom door shut, I moved. I slipped out of bed and grabbed my phone. A message from Mason Ryland was already waiting. Mason, confirmed. Ethan opened a new trust account last night. My stomach tightened. A trust account. That meant one thing. He was hiding money in a way that made it harder to trace and easier to shield. Then another message came through. Mason and Maya. This gets worse. I stared at the screen. My throat went dry. Then his third message arrived. Mason, Claire Hart isn't his first. Not even close. A cold numbness spread through my chest. I typed back with shaking fingers. Me, what do you mean? Mason replied almost immediately. Mason, he's been connected to at least 3 women in 5 years. One filed a complaint at her workplace claiming financial coercion. It didn't stick. Money disappeared. She moved out of state. My blood turned to ice. This wasn't an affair. This wasn't a midlife crisis. This wasn't even a nasty divorce. This was a pattern, a system, a method. System, a method. Ethan wasn't just cheating, he was hunting. And I had unknowingly been his biggest trophy. I stared at my reflection in the dark window. My face looked calm, but behind my eyes something had changed. Because now, this wasn't just about my marriage. This was about stopping him. 8:12 a.m. The first move, Ethan left for work at exactly 8:00. Same as always, predictable. He kissed me goodbye, told me he loved me, and walked out like he hadn't stolen nearly $4 million from my life. The second his car left the driveway, I opened my laptop and logged into my personal banking account. Not the consolidated one Ethan controlled, my private emergency account. An account I opened years ago when Harper warned me that every woman needs a private safety net. Back then, I thought Harper was paranoid. Now I realized she was wise. There was only $42,000 in it, but it was mine. It was untouched, and it was enough to move fast. I called Calvin Reese immediately. He picked up on the second ring. Maya, he said, already alert. Tell me you got the documents. I did, I said. Photos, passports. A printed timeline for Friday. There was a pause. Then Calvin said, "Okay, that's huge. And Ethan opened a new trust last night," I added. Calvin's tone sharpened. "How do you know that?" "I hired a pie," I said. Another pause. Then a low, approving chuckle. "Good," Calvin said. "You're learning quickly. So what now?" I asked. Calvin didn't hesitate. "We filed today," he said. "Emergency financial restraining order, freeze marital assets, block transfers, stop him from moving anything else." My heart pounded. "How fast can that happen?" Fast, Calvin said. "But you need to do something else too." "What?" "You need to secure your access to everything," he replied. "New passwords, new email, new devices if you can. Because if Ethan suspects, he will lock you out." I swallowed. "I think he already suspects," I admitted. Calvin's voice lowered. "Then it's time for the second move," he said. "And what's that?" "Prepare for Friday," he said. "Because Friday isn't just about papers, it's about control. He will try to humiliate you, corner you, make you panic." I exhaled slowly. "I won't panic," I whispered. Calvin's voice turned firm. "Good," he said, "because we're going to make him panic instead." 10:30 a.m. The trap inside the trap. By mid-morning, Calvin's office had already drafted the emergency motion. They needed one more thing, a declaration from me, a sworn statement describing what I overheard, what I found, and what I believed Ethan was doing. I sat at my desk writing it. It felt surreal, like I was writing a report about someone else's life, someone else's husband, someone else's nightmare, someone else's nightmare. But then I reached the part where Ethan said, "By Friday, she'll be out of options." And my hands stopped shaking, because now I knew what Friday really meant. It wasn't about divorce papers. It was about Ethan proving to himself that he could dismantle a woman's life and watch her beg. He didn't want to leave me. He wanted to win against me, which meant he wasn't prepared for me to refuse to play his role. When I finished the declaration, I emailed it to Calvin. Then I did something else, something that felt dangerous and brilliant and insane all at once. I texted Ethan. Hey babe Red, I'm thinking about what you said. I'll sign the papers tomorrow morning. I trust you." My finger hovered over send. It was a lie, a delicious lie. One that would make Ethan relax. One that would make him arrogant. One that would make him walk into Friday certain he'd already won. And arrogance is the greatest weakness of a man like Ethan. 12:18 p.m. The call that changed everything. My phone buzzed again. "Mason," I answered quickly. "Mason," I whispered. "Maya," Mason said, voice low. "I'm outside your house." I froze. "What? I need to show you something," he said. My throat tightened. "Right now? Right now?" Mason confirmed. "It's about Claire. It's about Claire." I grabbed my coat and slipped out the side door like I was sneaking out of my own life. Mason sat in an unmarked gray sedan across the street. I climbed in. He handed me a folder, thick, heavy, real. Inside were printed photos, screenshots, documents, and the first thing I saw made my stomach flip. Barpic, a photo of Ethan and Claire, not walking together in public but standing outside a courthouse. Claire was holding a manila envelope. Ethan's hand was on her lower back. Not romantic, possessive, like he was guiding her, like she belonged to the plan. My voice barely worked. "What is this?" Mason stared straight ahead. "Claire Hart isn't just a mistress," he said. "She's involved." "Involved how?" Mason flipped to another page. A bank record. A transfer. Not from Ethan to Claire, from Claire to Ethan. My skin went cold. "She paid him?" I whispered. Mason nodded once. Mason nodded once. "3 payments," he said. "Same amounts, same schedule. She's not being spoiled, Maya." I stared down at the numbers. My mind tried to make it make sense. "Then why is she with him?" Mason's voice turned even colder. "Because they're running a scam," he said. I looked up slowly. "A scam?" Mason tapped the folder. "This isn't his first marriage with sudden financial movement," he said. "It isn't his first wife to be conveniently out of options. Claire is connected to multiple shell businesses. She's not just sleeping with him." My blood ran cold. "She's working with him." Mason nodded. "It looks like they target women with high income, stable assets, good credit," he said. "They manipulate emotionally, then they isolate financially." My throat tightened so much I could barely breathe. "This can't be real." Mason turned toward me. "It's real," he said. "And if we're right, Friday isn't just divorce papers." My voice shook. "Then what is it?" Mason's eyes didn't blink. "It's the extraction," he said. "The final clean out before you can fight back." I stared at him, heart racing. "So what do I do?" Mason's voice became razor sharp. "You make sure Friday becomes the day they get exposed," he said. 2:40 p.m. The third move that afternoon, I met Calvin again. This time he wasn't alone. There was another woman in his office, early 40s, sharp eyes, perfect posture, a calm, commanding presence. Calvin introduced her. "Maya, this is Special Agent Renee Klein." I blinked. "Special Agent?" I repeated. Renee nodded once. "I'm with a federal task force specializing in financial fraud," she said. My heart slammed. You're FBI." Renee didn't confirm directly, but her smile said everything. Calvin leaned forward. "Maya," he said, "the passports you found, the altered document, and the pattern Mason uncovered, this may go beyond civil divorce. We're in criminal territory." I swallowed hard. "So what happens now?" Renee slid a document across the desk. "We need your cooperation," she said. "And we need you to keep Ethan calm until Friday." My stomach twisted. "You want me to let him serve me?" Renee's expression didn't change. "We want him to believe the plan is working," she said. "People make mistakes when they think they've won." My skin prickled. I nodded slowly. "Okay." I whispered. Calvin placed his hand over the folder. We filed to freeze assets now, he said, but the criminal side. They want Ethan and Claire caught in the act. I stared at the wall, mind spinning. How do I help? Renee's tone remained steady. On Friday morning, Ethan will likely try to get you to sign, she said. You will not sign anything. You will agree verbally, appear conflicted, appear scared. My stomach turned. Scared, I whispered. Renee held my gaze. Sell it, she said simply. Then Calvin added something that made my blood turn cold. And Maya, do not be alone with him when he realizes he's losing control. Thursday night, the lie that saved me that night, Ethan came home early, too early. And the moment he walked in, I felt it. Something in him was different. He wasn't humming, he wasn't relaxed. He looked alert, like a man who smelled smoke. He set his keys on the counter and studied me. You okay? He asked. Yes, I said brightly. Just tired. He watched me like I was a puzzle. Then he smiled slowly. So, he said, leaning against the counter, tomorrow's the day. I let my shoulders slump slightly, like I was overwhelmed. Yeah, I said quietly. Tomorrow. Ethan walked closer, lowering his voice. You don't seem excited, he murmured. I swallowed, letting my eyes gloss with just enough emotion to sell the story. I'm just scared, I whispered. Ethan's eyes softened, but not with compassion, with hunger, because fear fed him. Scared of what? He asked gently. I forced myself to look away. Of losing everything, I admitted. Ethan exhaled like he was pleased. He stepped closer and brushed my hair back like a loving husband. You won't lose everything, he whispered. Not if you do this the right way, his way, the surrender way. I nodded slowly, like I was breaking. Okay, I whispered. Ethan kissed my forehead, and then he said something that made my blood freeze again. Good girl. My stomach twisted violently, but I kept my face soft, kept my hands still, kept my voice small, because I knew what tomorrow required. Tomorrow wasn't about being brave, it was about being convincing. And Ethan believed he was holding the leash. He had no idea the leash had been cut days ago. Friday, 8:57 a.m. I wore a sweater Ethan liked. Soft, cream-colored. The color of innocence. I wanted him to look at me and see exactly what he expected. A woman about to crumble. I poured coffee, set out the documents folder, and waited. Ethan came downstairs at 8:59 a.m. right on schedule, like a man following his own script. He sat across from me and slid the folder forward. I've made everything easy for you, he said smoothly. My hands trembled on purpose as I opened the folder. There it was. The post-nuptial agreement, the bank authorization, a settlement offer that was insultingly low. My signature line waiting like a noose. I swallowed hard and whispered, I don't know if I can do this. Ethan leaned forward, voice calm, dangerous. You can, he said. You have to. My eyes flicked up to him. Ethan, I whispered, is there someone else? His eyes didn't change. Not even a little. No, he lied instantly. What are you talking about? I nodded slowly like I believed him. Then I whispered, okay. I picked up the pen. Ethan watched like a predator watching prey step into the trap. I held the pen above the page, my hand shaking. And then, the front doorbell rang. Ethan froze. What the hell, he muttered. I blinked innocently. Were you expecting someone? I asked softly. Ethan stood up slowly, suspicion creeping into his face. He walked to the door and opened it. And everything changed in 1 second. Because standing on the porch was Calvin Reese, in a suit, calm, professional. Beside him stood Mason Ryland, arms crossed, expression blank. And behind them, two people in plain clothes who didn't look like they belonged in a suburban neighborhood. Special Agent Renee Klein stepped forward slightly. Ethan's face tightened instantly. What is this? Ethan snapped. Calvin spoke calmly. Ethan Caldwell, he said. I represent Maya Caldwell. You are being served. Ethan's head snapped toward me. His eyes turned sharp. Dangerous. You, he whispered. I stood slowly, letting my fear drop away. My voice came out steady. Hi, Ethan, I said softly. His face twisted. What did you do? He hissed. Renee stepped forward. Miss Caldwell, she said, voice clear, controlled. We have reason to believe you've been involved in fraudulent transfers, document alteration, and coordinated financial abuse. Ethan laughed once. A short, ugly sound. This is insane, he said. Then he turned to me like a man snapping his mask off. You think you're smart? He whispered. You think you can win? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult him. I didn't cry. I simply said, you told Claire I wouldn't fight back. Ethan's face went completely still. Calvin held up a phone. And we have that recorded, Calvin said. Ethan's jaw clenched. And in that moment, for the first time, Ethan looked afraid. Not of me, of exposure, because he couldn't charm his way out of a recording. He couldn't gaslight a file. He couldn't manipulate evidence. Then Mason spoke for the first time. You should sit down, Mason said, calm as ice. This is going to get ugly. Ethan's voice rose. You have no right. Renee lifted her hand slightly, cutting him off. We do, she said. And then she said the sentence Ethan never expected to hear in his own kitchen. We've already frozen the marital assets pending investigation. Ethan's face snapped toward her. What? Calvin nodded calmly. Emergency motion approved, he said. Funds are frozen. Transfers blocked, accounts flagged. Smagged. Ethan's face drained. All that confidence, all that control gone in one sentence. No, Ethan said, voice low. That's not possible. I stepped forward. Yes, it is, I said quietly. Ethan stared at me like I wasn't his wife anymore. Like I was a stranger. Like I was a threat. Like I was a threat. You can't do this, he whispered. I tilted my head. The funny thing, I said, is you thought I couldn't. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. Then he did something that made my blood run cold. He smiled, slow, dark, and he whispered just loud enough for me to hear, you just ruined your own life. And before I could respond, the doorbell rang again. Everyone turned. Mason's eyes narrowed. Renee's hand subtly moved toward her hip. Calvin stiffened. I felt my heartbeat spike. Ethan turned toward the door with sudden confidence. Like he expected whoever was out there, he opened it. And there she was, Claire Hart, standing in a fitted black coat, holding a designer bag like she was arriving for brunch. Her eyes flicked over the room, over Calvin, over Mason, over Renee, over me, and then she smiled, like she wasn't surprised, like she'd been waiting for this moment too. Well, Claire said lightly, stepping inside, this looks messy. Ethan's voice hardened. What are you doing here? He snapped. Claire's smile didn't falter. I came for what's mine, she said. My stomach dropped, because Claire wasn't confused. She wasn't scared. She wasn't even pretending. Sorge. She looked at Ethan like he was a partner who disappointed her. Then she looked at me like I was nothing, and in a voice smooth as poison, she said, You're smarter than he said you were. Ethan's eyes widened. What? He whispered. Claire's gaze stayed on me. He told me you'd beg, she said casually. He told me you'd fold, but I guess you surprised him. I stared at her. My voice came out cold. How many women, Claire? Claire blinked once, then shrugged. As many as it takes, she said. Ethan's voice rose. Shut up, he hissed. But it was too late, because Claire had just confirmed the whole thing, right in front of law enforcement, right in front of my lawyer, right in front of witnesses. Renee stepped forward. Miss Hart, she said, you may want to reconsider what you say next. Claire smiled wider. Oh, she purred. And why's that? Renee's eyes sharpened. Because you're also being investigated, she said. And suddenly, Claire's smile twitched, just slightly. The first crack. The first sign that she wasn't untouchable after all. Ethan looked between them, then back at me. And I watched him realize it. He wasn't in control. Not of the money. Not of me. Not of Claire. Not of anything. He'd built a trap so carefully. And somehow, he'd stepped into mine instead. The final twist, Renee turned to Ethan. Miss Caldwell, she said, we're going to need you to come with us. Ethan laughed again, desperate, angry. No, he snapped. No, you're not. This is my house. I spoke before anyone else could. It's our house, I corrected quietly. Ethan's head snapped toward me, his eyes burned. You think you won? You think you won? He whispered. You think this is over? Calvin stepped in immediately. It is, he said. For you, Ethan took one step toward me. Not fast, not aggressive enough to justify force, but close enough to feel like a threat. His voice lowered. You have no idea what you've done, he said. And then he leaned in, whispering the sentence that made my skin crawl more than anything he'd said before. You don't know who you married. I looked at him calmly. Oh, I said softly. I do now. And then I pulled out my phone. I hit play, and Ethan's own voice filled the kitchen. By Friday, she'll be out of options. Claire's face dropped. Ethan's expression twisted with rage, and Renee nodded, like she'd just gotten the final confirmation she needed. That's enough, Renee said. She turned to her partner. Take them both. Claire's eyes widened. What? Wait, what? She snapped, finally panicking. Ethan's face went blank, not calm, empty, like someone unplugged him. And as they escorted Ethan toward the door, he turned back to look at me one last time. Not with love, not with sadness, not even with hatred, but with disbelief. Like he couldn't understand how his easy wife had become the reason his entire world was collapsing. And as he passed the doorway, he whispered, "This isn't over." I watched him disappear onto the porch. Then I shut the door, quietly, gently, like closing the cover of a book. Epilogue. 3 months later, the divorce wasn't easy. It wasn't fast, it wasn't clean. But it was something better than easy. It was mine. The frozen assets saved me. The investigation revealed things that made me sick. Shell companies, fake identities, fraudulent loan applications. Claire's web of consulting firms that existed on paper only. Ethan's private accounts that I'd never seen. And women, more women, who came forward once they realized they weren't alone. He didn't just hurt me, he hurt many. But here's what he didn't expect. He didn't get to walk away quietly this time, because this time someone fought back. And once one person fights back, others finally feel brave enough to speak too. I moved out of that house, not because it wasn't mine, but because I didn't want to breathe in his shadow anymore. I bought a smaller place near the water. A simple home, a clean start. And on the first morning there, I opened my windows wide and let sunlight flood in like a promise. No more secrets, no more pretending, no more good girl, just me and my life, and the future I rebuilt with my own hands. If you made it to the end, you're officially part of the Moments with Her family. Read. Now tell me, where are you watching from? Globe Showing Americas. And if you enjoyed this story, subscribe and like, because I post suspense stories that keep you hooked till the last second. And one last question. Would you have confronted Ethan immediately? Or would you have played it smart like Maya did? Eyes.